The whisper of the ocean was the first thing Alara noticed, even before she fully opened her eyes. It was a rhythmic, comforting sound, a deep exhalation and inhalation that had lulled her to sleep more effectively than any sheep counting ever could. The scent, too, was distinct, salt and damp earth, with a faint undertone of pine, a stark contrast to the city air she'd grown accustomed to. She stretched, a slow, languid movement that cracked a few joints, and finally pushed herself up. Sunlight, pale and hesitant, filtered through the thin curtains of her rented cottage, painting the rustic wooden floorboards in stripes of gold. Celeste Cove, she mused, was already living up to its name, even by day. Alara Vance wasn't one for impulsive decisions. Her life was meticulously planned, governed by celestial calendars and atmospheric conditions. But when she'd seen the projections for the Whisperer's Comet, a once-in-a-century spectacle, due to make its closest approach to Earth in the upcoming weeks, she'd known she had to be in the darkest, clearest skies available. Celeste Cove, nestled on a remote stretch of the North Atlantic coast, had been the unanimous recommendation from every astrophotography forum she frequented. Its isolation meant minimal light pollution, its unique geographical position often afforded cloudless nights, and there was even an abandoned lighthouse on the cliffs, rumored to offer an unparalleled vantage point. She'd arrived yesterday evening, her ancient but reliable SUV groaning under the weight of telescopes, cameras, tripods, and a mountain of warm clothing. The drive had been long, winding through forgotten forests and along dramatic cliff edges, eventually depositing her in a village that seemed to have materialized from a vintage postcard. Stone cottages with slate roofs, a tiny harbor bobbing with fishing boats, and a single general store that doubled as a post office and local gossip hub. Her cottage, Stargazer's Nook, was exactly as advertised, small, cozy, and perched just above the high tide line, with an unobstructed view of the vast, ink-black ocean. Last night, exhausted from the drive, she'd only managed to unpack the essentials and make a quick, simple meal. But even through her fatigue, the sheer number of stars piercing the darkness had stolen her breath away. They weren't just pinpricks, they were jewels scattered across velvet, a glittering tapestry so dense it felt like she could reach out and pluck them. Today, though, was for serious preparation. After a quick breakfast of toast and strong coffee, Alara surveyed her equipment. Her prized possession, a custom-built, wide-field astrophotography telescope, sat patiently in its padded case, waiting for its moment to shine. There were also several high-resolution cameras, specialized lenses, star trackers, and a laptop loaded with astronomical software. This wasn't just a hobby. It was her passion, her calling, the silent language through which she understood the universe. The first task was scouting the perfect location. The cottage offered a decent view, but she needed something higher, something with an even wider panorama to capture the comet's long, ethereal tail as it swept across the heavens. The lighthouse, she decided, was her best bet. She pulled on a thick wool sweater, a waterproof jacket, and sturdy hiking boots. The air outside was crisp, carrying the invigorating chill of the sea. Gulls cried overhead, their calls echoing against the cliffs. The path to the lighthouse was a narrow, winding trail that hugged the coastline, rising steadily upwards. It was well-trodden, suggesting it was a local favorite for walks, but still offered a sense of wild solitude. As she walked, Alara noticed details she'd missed in her hurried arrival. Wild roses clung to the cliff face, their thorny branches resilient against the wind. Tiny, hardy wildflowers bloomed in cracks in the rock. The sea below was a turbulent dance of gray and emerald, crashing against the shore with relentless energy. Finally, she reached the lighthouse. It stood sentinel on the highest point of the headland, a magnificent, weather-beaten tower of white stone, its lantern room a dark, vacant eye. It had clearly been out of commission for decades, its paint peeling, its windows clouded with salt spray. A rusted iron gate guarded its entrance, but it was unlocked, creaking open with a mournful sigh. Inside, the air was cool and still, smelling of damp stone and forgotten time. A spiral staircase, surprisingly sturdy despite its age, wound its way upwards, illuminated by narrow slits in the wall. Alara ascended, her footsteps echoing in the silence, her heart thrumming with anticipation. The top, the lantern room, was magnificent. The glass panes, though dusty, offered a breathtaking 360-degree view. Y. To the east, the endless expanse of the ocean. To the west, the gentle curve of the coastline, leading down to Celeste Cove. And above, unimpeded by any earthly obstacle, lay the vast, open sky. This was it. This was where she would capture the Whisperer's comet. She spent a good hour up there, mentally mapping out camera angles, considering wind exposure, and imagining the comet blazing across the celestial dome. A flicker of excitement, hot and bright, bloomed in her chest. As she descended, a different thought occurred to her. How would she get her heavy equipment up here? The path, while walkable, was steep and uneven. She'd need assistance, or at least a cart designed for rough terrain. And who owned the lighthouse now? It looked abandoned, but surely someone was responsible for its upkeep, however minimal. Back in the village, the general store seemed like a logical first stop for answers. The bell above the door jingled merrily as she stepped inside, the scent of old wood, coffee, and something sweet greeting her. An elderly woman with kind eyes and a cascade of silver hair tied in a neat bun looked up from behind the counter. "Well, hello there, dearie," she said, her voice warm and laced with a gentle local accent. "You must be the new lass staying in the Stargazer's Nook. Ilara, isn't it?" Ilara smiled, surprised but not entirely unexpected. Small towns, she knew, had excellent intelligence networks. "That's right, Ilara Vance. And you must be?" "Maggie," the woman supplied. "Maggie O'Connell. Been running this place since my husband passed." "Just some information, actually," Ilara began. "I was up at the lighthouse, scouting for a good spot to set up my astronomy equipment. It's truly spectacular up there. I was wondering who owns it, or if it's possible to get permission to use it for a few weeks." Maggie chuckled, a soft rustling sound. "The lighthouse, eh? Been a fair few years since anyone's shown that much interest in it. It's technically owned by the Thorne family, always has been. Liam Thorne, he's the current custodian, though he doesn't do much with it these days." "Liam Thorne?" Ilara repeated, trying to place the name. "Aye. He's the boat builder down by the harbor. Strong hands, quiet man. Keeps to himself mostly, but he's good folk. You'll find his yard just past the old fish market near the rocky point." Maggie paused, then leaned forward conspiratorially. "He's got away with the stars himself, I hear. His granddad used to keep the light, swore he could read the constellations better than any chart." A boat builder who knew the stars? That was an unexpected and intriguing detail. "Thank you, Maggie. I'll go see him." The boatyard was a hive of quiet activity, though Ilara only saw one figure amidst the scattered tools, planks of wood, and half-finished hulls. The air here was thick with the smell of sawdust, resin, and the brine of the sea. A large, gray fishing boat, its keel propped up on wooden blocks, dominated the yard, its hull gleaming with a fresh coat of paint. The man working on it was broad-shouldered, with dark, windswept hair that fell across his forehead. He wore a faded denim shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, and trousers stained with paint and sawdust. He was focused, his brow furrowed in concentration as he meticulously sanded a section of the boat's side, his movements fluid and precise. Ilara hesitated, feeling suddenly awkward in her bright, functional outdoor gear amidst the raw, honest work of the yard. She cleared her throat gently. The man stopped, his sanding block freezing mid-stroke. He slowly straightened, turning to face her. His eyes, the color of deep sea, were calm and direct, holding a quiet intensity that made her feel, for a fleeting moment, as though he could see right through her. A faint line of sawdust dusted his strong jawline. "Can I help you?" His voice was low, a rumbling baritone, carrying the same quiet strength as his gaze. "Yes? Hello?" Ilara began, feeling a faint blush creep up her neck. "My name is Ilara Vance. I'm staying at the Stargazer's Nook. I believe you're Liam Thorne?" He nodded once, a terse acknowledgement. "I spoke with Maggie at the store," she continued, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm an astrophotographer, and I've come to Celeste Cove to capture the Whisperer's comet. I was hoping to use the lighthouse as my primary observation point. It has an incredible view. Maggie said you're the custodian, and I was wondering if it would be possible to get permission to use it for a few weeks." Liam Thorne regarded her silently for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. Elara felt a strange mix of curiosity and a prickle of unease. He wasn't overtly unfriendly, but his stillness was unnerving. "The lighthouse is old," he finally said, his voice flat. "It's not maintained. No power, no amenities." "I understand that," Elara replied, trying to sound confident. "I have all my own equipment and I'm quite self-sufficient. I just need access and a secure place to set up. I'm very careful with my gear, and I would treat the lighthouse with the utmost respect." He turned his head slightly, his eyes narrowing as he looked past her towards the distant headland where the lighthouse stood sentinel. "You'd be hauling heavy equipment up that path in the dark. It's treacherous in places." "I'm aware," she admitted. "I was hoping to find a way to transport it, perhaps a sturdy cart, or even some local help." Another silence stretched between them, punctuated by the cry of a seagull and the distant murmur of the sea. Elara found herself studying him, noticing the subtle lines around his eyes that suggested a lifetime spent squinting at the horizon, the way his hands, though calloused, moved with a surprising grace even when idle. "Why the comet?" he asked, his gaze returning to hers, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher in their depth. "It's rare," she explained, feeling her passion bubble up. "It's been over 100 years since it was visible from Earth. Its trajectory is unique, and its tail is expected to be exceptionally bright. It's a chance to capture something truly extraordinary, to contribute to our understanding of the universe, and just to witness its beauty." He looked at her then, a long, searching look that seemed to peel back her layers of professionalism and reveal the raw wonder beneath. A faint, almost imperceptible softening crossed his features. "My grandfather used to talk about the Whisperer's Comet," Liam said, his voice a little softer now, a hint of nostalgia in its depths. "He saw it when he was a boy, said it looked like a tear in the fabric of the night, shining with all the secrets of creation." Elara's eyes widened. "He saw it? That's incredible." "He kept the light here, before it was decommissioned. Used to say the stars were his second family, always there, always watching." Liam finally lowered his sanding block, resting it on a nearby crate. He wiped his hands on a rag. "The gate's unlocked. You can use it. Just be careful." Elara blinked, surprised by his sudden acquiescence. "Really? Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Thank you so much. I promise I'll be careful. Is there anything I can do in return?" He shook his head. "No, just appreciate the view. Not many do anymore." He paused, then added, "It gets cold up there, and windy, especially at night." "I've packed for it," she assured him, a genuine smile finally breaking through her professional demeanor. "Thank you again, truly." As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "There's an old shed near the base of the lighthouse. Used to store fishing gear. There might be a handcart in there if you're lucky. Might save you a few trips." Her smile widened. "That would be a huge help. Thank you, Liam." She used his first name, hoping it wasn't too forward, but he didn't react, merely gave another slight nod. Back at the cottage, Elara felt a renewed surge of energy. Permission granted. And a potential cart. Liam Thorne was a man of few words, but his quiet approval felt significant. There was something intriguing about him, a depth beneath his reserved exterior. A boat builder who carried the legacy of a lighthouse keeper, and who remembered the Whisperer's Comet from his grandfather's stories. The rest of the day was spent meticulously planning. She organized her equipment into manageable loads, made a detailed checklist, and cooked a hearty stew for dinner, anticipating long, cold nights on the cliff. As dusk began to settle, painting the sky in hues of soft orange and deep violet, Elara felt the familiar pull of the stars. She bundled up, grabbed her smallest camera and a pair of binoculars, and headed back up the path to the lighthouse. She didn't intend to set up her main gear tonight, just to familiarize herself with the darkness, the wind patterns, and the sheer, overwhelming beauty of the Celeste Cove night sky. The shed Liam had mentioned was indeed there, tucked away behind a tangle of gorse bushes. The padlock was rusted, but swung open easily enough. Inside, amidst dusty nets and ancient buoys, she found it, a sturdy, albeit rusty, wooden handcart with surprisingly robust wheels. A faint smile touched her lips. Liam Thorne, it seemed, was quietly helpful. By the time she reached the lantern room again, the last vestiges of twilight were fading, giving way to the inky blackness. And then, as if a cosmic curtain had been pulled back, the stars emerged. They were breathtaking. More numerous, more brilliant than even last night. The Milky Way stretched across the zenith like a luminous river, a celestial highway of stardust. Constellations she knew intimately from charts and textbooks now blazed with a vibrant, three-dimensional quality she'd rarely witnessed outside of remote desert observatories. Elara set up her camera on a small tripod, taking a few test shots of the star field, adjusting settings, feeling the familiar rhythm of her craft. The cold wind bit at her cheeks, but she barely noticed, lost in the silent grandeur above. She scanned the horizon with her binoculars, searching for the first faint glimmer of the Whisperer's comet. It wasn't due to be truly visible for another week or so, but sometimes, under perfect conditions, a precursor might be caught. As she swept the lenses across the northern sky, a movement caught her eye, not in the heavens, but on the ground below. A figure. Liam Thorne. He was standing on the cliff edge, a little way from the lighthouse, his silhouette stark against the faint glow of the distant village lights. He wasn't looking at her, or the lighthouse. He was looking up, his head tilted back, his gaze fixed on the same celestial tapestry that held her captive. He had a quiet presence, almost like another element of the landscape, as solid and rooted as the ancient rock beneath his feet. She watched him for a long moment, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through her. He hadn't come to check on her or to question her presence. He was simply there, sharing the vast, silent communion with the stars. A sudden gust of wind whipped around the lantern room, rattling the glass panes. Elara shivered, not just from the cold, but from a burgeoning sense of connection. Here, under the boundless expanse of the Celeste Cove sky, two solitary figures, bound by an ancient comet and a shared wonder, were silently weaving the first threads of something new. The night felt alive with possibility, the stars themselves seeming to hum a gentle, beckoning serenade. The Whisperer's comet was still weeks away, but Elara had a feeling her journey to Celeste Cove was already far more profound than she had ever anticipated. She lowered her binoculars, a soft smile playing on her lips. She wasn't just here to capture the stars. Perhaps she was here to find a new one. The cool night air still clung to her, a pleasant chill that hummed with the memory of shared silence and the vast, glittering expanse above. Elara carried that feeling with her back to her small cottage, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the thick wool blanket she'd been wrapped in. Sleep came easily, her dreams filled not with equations or celestial mechanics, but with the soft murmur of waves and the unexpected kindness in a pair of warm hazel eyes. The next morning, the sun streamed through her window, painting her modest living space in hues of gold. She made herself a cup of tea, the familiar ritual comforting, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the previous night. Liam. The name brought a quiet smile to her lips. She had come to Celeste Cove seeking solitude and cosmic wonders, but it seemed the universe had a different, perhaps more terrestrial surprise in store. After a quick breakfast, Elara decided to explore the village a little more. Her equipment was still mostly packed, waiting for the dedicated observatory she planned to set up in the coming days. For now, a leisurely stroll felt right. As if drawn by an invisible thread, her footsteps led her towards the heart of the cove, past quaint fishing boats bobbing gently in the harbor, and eventually, to the charming scent of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. Liam's cafe, the Starfish Sip, was even more inviting in the daylight. Its blue-painted exterior, adorned with nautical trinkets and window boxes overflowing with vibrant petunias, seemed to beckon her in. She pushed open the door, a chime announcing her arrival. The interior was cozy, filled with the soft clatter of mugs and the murmur of local chatter. Sunlight poured through large windows, illuminating a display of tempting pastries. Liam was behind the counter just as she remembered him, a relaxed competence in his movements, a ready smile for his customers. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and that same spark, that familiar warmth, flickered between them. "Morning, Elara," he said, his voice a low, pleasant rumble that cut through the cafe's gentle hum. "You're an early riser, even after a night of comet spotting." Elara felt a blush creep up her neck, a surprising sensation. "Morning, Liam. The stars keep me on a different clock, and the scent of your coffee is a powerful lure." She gestured towards the pastries. "What's good today?" "Everything's good," he chuckled, leaning against the counter, his gaze lingering on her. "But For a true stargazer, I'd recommend our moonbeam muffin. Blueberry and lemon zest, tastes like a burst of sunshine. She laughed, a genuine, unburdened sound. Sounds perfect. And a coffee, black, please. As he prepared her order, their conversation flowed easily. He asked about her plans for setting up her observatory, about the specific aspects of the Whisperer's comet that captivated her. She found herself explaining her research with an enthusiasm she usually reserved for fellow scientists, surprised by how intently he listened, asking insightful questions that showed a genuine curiosity. "So, you're looking for clues about the early universe, essentially," he summarized, handing her a steaming mug and a warm muffin on a small plate. "Like finding ancient messages written in stardust." "Exactly," she said, her eyes lighting up. "And comets are like time capsules, carrying pristine material from the solar system's formation." "Fascinating," he murmured, his gaze soft. "Makes you feel very small, doesn't it? And very connected all at once." They talked for what felt like moments, but the gradually emptying cafe suggested otherwise. She learned he'd grown up in Celeste Cove, inherited the cafe from his grandmother, and spent his mornings baking and his afternoons often out on the water, fishing or exploring the quieter coves. He had a deep, abiding love for his home, a grounding presence that Ilara, with her often transient life, found both foreign and incredibly appealing. "You know," Liam said, wiping down the counter as the last morning rush dissipated, "if you're looking for the best spot to set up your gear, away from light pollution, I might know a few places off the beaten path. Places only the locals really know about." Ilara's heart did a little flutter. "Really? That would be amazing, Liam. I'm still scoping out locations." "Consider it my local welcome wagon service," he grinned. "How about tomorrow afternoon? I can take you to a spot I think would be perfect. We could pack a picnic lunch." "I'd like that very much," she said, her smile mirroring his. The following day, true to his word, Liam arrived at her cottage in a sturdy, well-maintained Jeep, its back loaded with a cooler and a blanket. Ilara had spent the morning unpacking some of her less delicate equipment, her anticipation for their outing making the task feel lighter. She grabbed her camera and a small notebook, ready for whatever adventure awaited. Their drive took them away from the main village, winding along a narrow, unpaved road that snaked through dense coastal forest. The air grew crisper, carrying a scent of pine and salt. Liam pointed out local landmarks, telling her stories of the cove's history, tales of fishermen and old lighthouse keepers, his voice a soothing narrative against the rumble of the Jeep. Finally, they reached a clearing high above the ocean. It was a breathtaking vista, a panoramic view of the rugged coastline stretching out in both directions, the turquoise water sparkling under the midday sun. A small, secluded beach nestled in a cove below, accessible only by a winding, somewhat treacherous path. But it was the open expanse of sky above them, utterly free of any artificial light sources, that truly captivated Ilara. "This incredible, Liam," she breathed, turning a slow circle, her gaze sweeping from the horizon to the zenith. The visibility here would be phenomenal. Liam's face glowed with quiet satisfaction. "I thought you'd like it. My grandfather used to bring me up here to watch meteor showers when I was a kid. He always said this was where the land met the stars." They spread the blanket on a patch of soft grass, the sound of distant waves a gentle lullaby. Liam unpacked their lunch: crusty bread, artisanal cheeses, fresh fruit, and small, perfectly baked savory tarts that Ilara suspected came straight from his cafe. Everything was delicious, simple yet elegant, and eaten with a relaxed camaraderie that felt surprisingly natural. They talked about their lives, sharing pieces of themselves that went beyond casual introductions. Ilara spoke of her nomadic existence, moving from observatory to observatory, chasing celestial phenomena across continents. She admitted to the quiet loneliness that sometimes accompanied such a life, the challenge of forming lasting connections when her work always called her elsewhere. Liam listened intently, his gaze unwavering. "It sounds exciting, though," he said, picking at a blade of grass. "Always seeing new places, new skies. I've always been tied to Celeste Cove. Never really felt the pull to leave, not permanently anyway. My roots run pretty deep here." He paused, a contemplative look on his face. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like, though, to just pack up and go to see the world beyond these shores." There's beauty in both, Elara mused, sipping her water. In the vastness of the unknown, and in the deep, quiet comfort of home. He met her eyes, a profound understanding passing between them. Exactly. As the afternoon wore on, they explored the clearing, Elara mentally mapping out potential spots for her telescope and equipment. Liam pointed out different constellations he'd learned from his grandfather, his knowledge surprisingly extensive for someone not professionally involved in astronomy. He even knew the local names for some of them, passed down through generations of fishermen who navigated by the stars. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and soft purples. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of the sea. They sat side by side on the blanket, watching the spectacle, a comfortable silence settling between them. "Thank you, Liam," Elara said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "This place, it's perfect. And this day has been perfect." He turned to her, his hand reaching out, his fingers gently brushing hers. A jolt, soft yet undeniable, passed through Elara. "My pleasure, Elara," he said, his voice a little lower, a little huskier. "I'm glad you're here." His thumb stroked the back of her hand, a simple gesture that sent a shiver down her spine. The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken emotions. Elara's heart pounded a rhythm against her ribs, a wild drumbeat she hadn't felt in years. She looked into his eyes, seeing not just kindness, but a deep, burgeoning affection that mirrored her own. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, the vast expanse of the sky a silent witness to their burgeoning connection. Then, with a sigh, Liam gently squeezed her hand before releasing it, the spell broken, but the warmth of his touch lingering. He stood up, stretching. "We should probably head back before it gets too dark for the drive." The drive back was quieter, filled with the comfortable aftermath of shared intimacy. Elara felt lighter, happier, a sense of belonging settling over her that she hadn't expected to find so far from her usual haunts. Over the next week, Elara threw herself into setting up her observatory. She found the perfect spot in Liam's suggested clearing, far enough from the village lights, yet accessible. Hauling her equipment up the winding road was a challenge, but Liam, without being asked, showed up with his jeep and strong arms, helping her transport the heavy crates and carefully assemble the sensitive instruments. He didn't just help with the physical labor, he offered moral support, bringing her coffee and snacks, listening patiently as she explained the intricacies of her telescope and spectrometers. He even helped her calibrate some of the preliminary settings. His practical, hands-on approach a surprising asset. "You're a natural assistant, Liam," she teased one afternoon as he held a level steady while she adjusted a mount. He grinned. "Just applying my keen eye for detail, and making sure you don't fall off a ladder." Their days fell into a comfortable pattern. Mornings, Elara worked at her observatory, making initial observations, testing her equipment. Afternoons, she'd often find herself at the Starfish Sip, either for lunch or just a coffee, drawn by the welcoming atmosphere and, more importantly, by Liam. They'd talk for hours, about everything and nothing, his life in Celeste Cove, her travels, their shared love for the natural world, the mysteries of the universe. He told her about his grandmother Maeve, who had founded the Starfish Sip and instilled in him a love for baking and community. He spoke of the challenges of keeping a small business afloat in a changing world, but also of the immense satisfaction he found in being a part of Celeste Cove's fabric. Elara, in turn, shared more about her family, her early fascination with the night sky, and the mentors who had guided her path. She even confessed her fear of heights, a rather inconvenient phobia for an astronomer who often had to climb scaffolding to reach instruments. Liam had simply listened, his gaze reassuring, making her feel safe enough to be vulnerable. One evening, after a particularly successful calibration session, Elara invited Liam to her cottage for dinner. It was a simple meal, pasta with fresh seafood he'd provided from his morning catch, but the atmosphere was warm and intimate. They sat on her small porch, the gentle murmur of the waves accompanying their conversation, the stars beginning to prickle the deepening twilight sky. "It's strange," Elara said, swirling the wine in her glass. "I've never really stayed in one place long enough to feel settled. But here, with you, it feels different." She looked at him, her heart in her eyes. Liam reached across the table, taking her hand in his. his fingers intertwining with hers. I know what you mean. It feels good, Alara, really good. His thumb gently caressed her skin, sending shivers through her. The air was charged with a gentle electricity, a promise of something deeper. She leaned into the touch, her gaze locked with his. The unspoken words hung in the air, a delicate bridge forming between them. The arrival of the Whisperer's comet was drawing closer, only 2 weeks away now. Alara's scientific excitement was palpable, but it was now intertwined with a different kind of anticipation, the shared experience she would have with Liam. They had planned to watch its peak together from their special clearing, a private viewing that felt deeply personal. One cloudy afternoon, when observation was impossible, Alara found Liam in his small workshop behind the cafe, meticulously mending a fishing net. The scent of salt and twine filled the air. He looked up, his brow furrowed in concentration, and smiled when he saw her. "Lost in the clouds?" he asked, setting the net down. "Figuratively and literally," she sighed, leaning against the doorframe. "It's frustrating to have the equipment ready and the sky refusing to cooperate." Liam wiped his hands on a rag. "The sea teaches you patience, Alara, and sometimes a little break from the work is exactly what you need." He gestured to a small wooden boat, half finished, on a stand in the corner. "Come, let me show you something." He led her over to the boat, its smooth, unfinished wood smelling of cedar. "This is a project I've been working on for years. My grandfather started it but never finished. I'm hoping to launch it by next spring." He traced the curve of the hull with his fingers. "It's meant to be a small pleasure boat for exploring the hidden coves, finding the quietest spots." Alara ran her hand over the polished wood, feeling the love and care that had gone into its creation. "It's beautiful, Liam. A true labor of love." "It is," he agreed, his eyes shining. "I call her the Stargazer. Thought it was fitting. A boat to chase horizons, both on the water and above it." He looked at her then, a soft, unspoken question in his eyes. "Maybe when she's finished we could take her out, find a new horizon together." Alara's breath hitched. His words were a gentle invitation, a glimpse into a future he was quietly building, and she found herself wanting to be a part of it. "I'd like very much, Liam," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Very, very much." The days leading up to the comet's closest approach were a whirlwind of activity for Alara. She finalized her equipment settings, ran simulations, and prepared her data capture protocols. But even amidst the scientific intensity, Liam was a constant, steady presence. He'd bring her meals to the observatory, his quiet companionship a comforting anchor in her, often solitary work. He understood her dedication, never making her feel guilty for her long hours, but always ensuring she took breaks, ate, and didn't lose herself entirely in the cosmos. One evening, as the last vestiges of twilight faded, and the first stars began to pierce the indigo canvas, Liam sat beside her at the observatory, a thermos of hot cocoa between them. She was making a final adjustment to a lens, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You're like a high priestess of the night sky, Alara," he murmured, watching her. "So focused, so reverent." She smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "It's a sacred space out here, and a sacred mission." She turned to him, her expression serious. "Liam, about the comet, it's going to be spectacular, but it's also a bittersweet moment for me. After it passes, my work here will largely be done. I'll need to process the data, write reports, move on to the next project." A shadow crossed his face, subtle but perceptible. He nodded slowly. "I understand. Your life calls you to different places." His voice was quiet, carefully neutral, but Alara could hear the underlying wistfulness. Her heart ached. She knew this was the unspoken elephant in the room. Her transient life, his deeply rooted one. How could their paths truly merge? "It's not set in stone, Liam," she found herself saying, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. She reached out, her hand covering his. "My contract here is for a few more weeks after the comet's peak, for data analysis, and after that, well, the universe is vast, but it's also full of choices." She squeezed his hand gently. "And Celeste Cove has certainly shown me wonders I never anticipated." He looked at her, a glimmer of hope returning to his eyes, a soft smile playing on his lips. "It has, hasn't it?" He lifted her hand, turning it over, and pressed a tender kiss to her palm, sending a wave of warmth through her. "Whatever happens, Elara," he said, his gaze intense, "I'm glad you came here. You've brought a new kind of light to Celeste Cove." As the night deepened and the Milky Way began to arch majestically across the sky, they sat in comfortable silence, their hands still clasped. The Whisperer's comet was just a few days away from its closest approach, its faint glow already discernible to Elara's trained eye, a cosmic beacon drawing them closer. But Elara knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that the most profound discovery she was making in Celeste Cove wasn't light years away. It was right here, beside her, warm and real, a star just waiting to be truly seen. He was. And as Elara turned her head, her gaze meeting his in the soft, fading light, she saw it, a kindness so profound, a quiet strength, that had been steadily drawing her in since the moment she'd stumbled into Celeste Cove. His eyes, the color of the sea on a calm day, held a gentle warmth that mirrored the feeling blossoming in her own chest. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The silence that had always been a companion to her solitude now felt like a shared space, a comfortable blanket woven from unspoken understanding. He squeezed her hand, a simple, reassuring gesture that sent a ripple of contentment through her. "The air is getting crisp," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that resonated pleasantly within her. "Perhaps we should head back." Elara nodded, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Yes, it's been perfect." They rose, still hand in hand, and began the slow descent from the bluff. The path, familiar now, felt different tonight. Each step was lighter, imbued with the quiet joy of discovery. As they walked, the sounds of the cove gradually returned. The distant cry of a gull, the rhythmic hush of waves against the shore, the gentle rustle of leaves in the sea breeze. Elara found herself noticing details she hadn't before, the way the moonlight cast long, dancing shadows of the ancient trees, the sweet earthy scent of damp soil and sea salt, the faint twinkle of lights from the village below. Everything seemed sharper, more vibrant, as if her senses had been awakened by the quiet man beside her. "You have a way of seeing things," Finn said, breaking the comfortable quiet once more. "Not just through your telescope, but everything." Elara chuckled softly. "It's a hazard of the job, I suppose. Always looking for patterns, for meaning. Sometimes I forget to just be." He paused, turning to face her fully as they reached a small clearing. The moonlight illuminated his features, highlighting the gentle curve of his smile. "Perhaps that's what we're here for then," he said, his thumb brushing lightly over the back of her hand. "To remind each other to just be, and to see the beauty in the being." Her heart fluttered. It was such a simple statement, yet it held so much truth, so much quiet promise. Elara, the woman who meticulously mapped the cosmos, felt a profound sense of grounding with this man. He wasn't asking her to abandon her stars, but to find another kind of wonder right here on Earth beside him. They continued their walk, the conversation flowing easily now, punctuated by comfortable silences. They talked about the comet, about its journey through the vastness of space, and about the anticipation building in Celeste Cove for its closest approach. Elara found herself explaining complex celestial mechanics in terms Finn could understand, her passion for the subject shining through, and he listened with an attentiveness that made her feel truly heard. He, in turn, spoke of the local legends surrounding the comet, tales of wishes granted and profound changes ushered in by its luminous passage. He spoke of its ethereal beauty, how it seemed to paint the night sky with a brush of light, and Elara realized that his artistic eye saw the same wonder she did, just through a different lens. Reaching her cottage, the familiar scent of salt and pine welcoming them, Elara felt a pang of reluctance to end the evening. They stopped at her porch, the air suddenly thick with unspoken emotions. The moment stretched, full of quiet longing. "Thank you, Finn," she said, her voice a little softer than she intended. "For tonight, for showing me the bluff. For everything." He smiled, a gentle warmth in his eyes that reached deep into her soul. He didn't move, his hand still clasped firmly in hers. "It was my pleasure, Elara, truly." His gaze dropped to their joined hands, then back to her eyes. I'd like to see you again tomorrow, if you're free." A wave of relief washed over her, unexpected and delightful. "I'd like that very much," she confessed, her heart doing a little flip. "I'm usually up early monitoring a comet, but after that, my day is open." "Perfect," he said, his smile widening slightly. "I'll come by around 10. Perhaps I could show you some of the hidden corners of Celeste Cove, places only the locals truly know." "I'd love that," she agreed, a genuine eagerness in her tone. He finally released her hand, the warmth lingering on her skin long after his touch was gone. He took a small step back, his eyes still holding hers. "Good night, Elara." "Good night, Finn." She watched him walk away, his silhouette disappearing into the moonlit path. Only when she could no longer see him did she turn and enter her cottage, a light, joyful feeling bubbling within her. The quiet hum of her equipment seemed less intrusive tonight, the vastness of the cosmos less daunting. She felt connected, grounded, and utterly, wonderfully alive. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that the most profound discovery she was making in Celeste Cove wasn't light years away. It was right here, beside her, warm and real, a star just waiting to be truly seen. And she felt, with a thrill that resonated through her entire being, that perhaps she was being seen, too. When? The next morning, Elara awoke with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. Her usual routine of checking the telescope's data feeds and refining her observation plan felt less like a solitary duty and more like a prelude to something wonderful. The Whisperer's comet was indeed growing brighter, its delicate tail now more distinct, a faint ethereal brushstroke across the pre-dawn sky. Her scientific mind meticulously logged the data, but her heart was already counting down the hours until Finn's arrival. When the gentle knock came precisely at 10, Elara felt a blush creep up her neck as she opened the door. Finn stood there, looking even more charming in a simple chambray shirt and worn jeans, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Good morning, Elara," he greeted, his eyes sparkling. "Ready for an adventure?" "As I'll ever be," she replied, stepping out and pulling the door closed behind her. Their adventure began with a stroll along the less traveled paths that wound along the coastline, far from the small cluster of shops and the main fishing dock. Finn led her to a small, secluded beach, hidden behind a curtain of windswept cypress trees. The sand here was a pale rose color, scattered with iridescent seashells, and the water was a mesmerizing blend of turquoise and emerald green. "This is where I often come to find inspiration," he explained, gesturing to the expanse of natural beauty. "The light here is unlike anywhere else in the cove." Elara squinted, trying to see it through his eyes. "It's beautiful," she agreed, picking up a perfectly spiraled conch shell. "I can see why you'd want to capture it." "I try," he said, a hint of self-deprecation in his tone. "But some things, some feelings, are just too grand for a canvas." He looked at her then, a meaningful glint in his eyes, and Elara felt her cheeks warm again. They walked for a long time talking about art, about science, about the subtle ways they both sought to understand the world around them. Finn spoke of the challenge of translating the fleeting beauty of a moment into something tangible, a painting or a sculpture that could evoke emotion. Elara, in turn, found herself sharing the profound awe she felt when observing distant galaxies, the humbling realization of humanity's place in the cosmic dance, and the intricate, mathematical beauty of the universe. They discovered common ground in their shared passion for discovery, for seeing beyond the surface, whether it was the surface of a canvas or the visible spectrum of light. He then led her further inland, through a winding path shaded by ancient oaks, to a small, unassuming building nestled among the trees. "This is my sanctuary," he announced, pushing open a weathered wooden door. Elara stepped inside and gasped. The air was thick with the scent of turpentine, clay, and wood. It was Finn's studio, a creative haven brimming with life. Canvases leaned against walls, some finished vibrant with the colors of Celeste Cove, others half complete, hinting at landscapes and seascapes yet to fully emerge. Sculptures in various stages of completion sat on pedestals, smooth, organic shapes carved from local wood, delicate ceramic pieces, and even some intricate metalwork. Pottery wheels stood silent, awaiting their next transformation of earth into art. "Wow, Finn," she breathed, turning slowly, taking it all in. This is incredible. You're incredibly talented. He rubbed the back of his neck, a shy smile on his face. It's just what I do. Keeps me sane. He picked up a small glazed ceramic bowl, its surface shimmering with an iridescent sheen. This is a new glaze I'm experimenting with, inspired by the way the light catches the tide pools at sunset. Elara carefully took the bowl, running her fingers over its smooth, cool surface. It's like capturing a piece of the cosmos, she said, looking up at him. The way the colors shift. It reminds me of nebula dust. He looked surprised, then pleased. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. There's a cosmic beauty in everything, isn't there, if you just look closely enough? They spent hours in the studio, Elara asking questions, Finn patiently explaining his techniques and inspirations. He showed her sketches, some of which were surprisingly abstract, others detailed studies of local flora and fauna. He even had a series of paintings depicting the night sky, his artistic interpretation of star clusters and meteor showers. Seeing his art gave Elara a deeper insight into his soul. The quiet thoughtfulness, the keen observation, the profound connection he felt to the natural world around him. It felt like an intimate glimpse into his very being, and she cherished it. As the afternoon light began to mellow, painting the studio in golden hues, Finn suggested they grab a bite to eat. They found a small family-run cafe in the village, its walls adorned with local art, some of it Finn's, Elara noticed with a smile. Over steaming bowls of clam chowder and crusty bread, their conversation drifted to more personal topics. So, what brought you to Celeste Cove, Finn? Elara asked, her spoon stirring her chowder. You seem so at home here. He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. I suppose I am now. But I wasn't always. I grew up in a city, a bustling place, full of noise and concrete. I loved art, but it felt stifled there, like I was constantly fighting for space, for inspiration. After art school, I traveled for a while, looking for a place that felt right, and then I found Celeste Cove. It was like the land itself sighed and welcomed me. The pace, the light, the raw beauty. Just fitted a little. He looked at her, a gentle curiosity in his eyes. What about you, Elara? You're so passionate about the stars. Was Celeste Cove always part of the plan, or just a temporary stop? Elara took a moment to gather her thought. A temporary stop initially, she admitted. My research grant brought me here. The clear skies, minimal light pollution, the remote location, it's ideal for my work. My life has always been about the next celestial event, the next observatory, the next frontier. I've always felt more at home among the stars than anywhere on Earth, in a way. She smiled wryly. It's easier to predict the trajectory of a comet than the unpredictable currents of human emotion. Finn chuckled softly. Perhaps, but a comet's journey, however predictable, can still surprise you with its beauty, and human emotions, while complex, also have their own kind of predictable currents of kindness, of connection, of shared wonder. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. You've found something here, haven't you, Elara? Something beyond your research? She felt a blush creep up her neck again, but this time it was accompanied by a warmth that spread through her chest. Yes, she confessed softly, meeting his gaze. I have. I've found a different kind of wonder, and a different kind of light. Their eyes held for a moment, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The world outside the cafe seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them, bathed in the soft glow of understanding. It was a profound connection, one that transcended words, a shared recognition of the nascent, beautiful thing growing between them. Ah! The days that followed fell into a rhythm that Elara cherished. Mornings were for her comet observations, afternoons and evenings were for Finn. He continued to show her the hidden gems of Celeste Cove, an ancient lighthouse where the keeper told tales of sea monsters and ghostly ships, a winding river where otters played, a quaint little bookstore filled with forgotten classics and first editions. With each shared experience, each laugh, each quiet conversation, their bond deepened, weaving itself into the fabric of their lives. Elara found herself opening up to Finn in ways she hadn't to anyone else. She spoke of her childhood fascination with the cosmos, the long hours spent under the night sky, the solitary pursuit of knowledge that had defined her existence. She confided her occasional feelings of isolation, the sense of being an observer rather than a participant in the grand human drama. Finn listened with unwavering attention, his quiet presence a comforting anchor. He never offered empty platitudes, only understanding, sometimes a gentle touch on her arm, or a look that conveyed more empathy than any words could. In turn, Finn shared more of his own story. He spoke of his family, of the gentle grandmother who had first encouraged his artistic endeavors, of the simple joy he found in creating with his hands. He spoke of a past heartbreak, a relationship that had ended with him feeling unseen and unappreciated, which explained some of his quiet reserve, his careful approach to emotional connection. Elara felt a surge of tenderness for him, a desire to show him that she saw him, truly saw him, in all his quiet brilliance. Their touches became more frequent, more natural. A hand resting on her lower back as they walked, his fingers brushing hers over a shared map, a comforting arm around her shoulders as they watched a particularly spectacular sunset from the old pier. Each touch was light, respectful, yet carried an electric charge that left Elara tingling with warmth and anticipation. The Whisperer's comet was now a prominent feature in the night sky, its luminous presence growing with each passing evening. It hung like a celestial jewel, a constant reminder of Elara's mission, and now, a shared symbol of their burgeoning connection. They often spent evenings on the bluff, watching its progress, the telescope now a shared tool for wonder rather than a solitary instrument of science. "It's almost here," Elara whispered one evening, her eyes still pressed to the eyepiece, observing the comet's intricate structure. "Just 2 more nights until its closest approach." Finn, sitting beside her, his arm casually draped around her shoulders, hummed in agreement. "It's magnificent, like a promise etched in starlight." She pulled away from the telescope, turning to look at him. "A promise?" He met her gaze, his eyes reflecting the distant glow of the comet. "Yes, a promise of beauty, of wonder, of things yet to be discovered. And for us, a promise of a moment we'll share, a moment that feels destined." Elara's heart swelled. He understood. He truly understood not just her fascination with the cosmos, but the deeper meaning it was taking on for them. "I want to watch it from the highest point in Celeste Cove," she said, a sense of urgency in her voice. "The old lighthouse, I've heard the view from up there is unparalleled." Finn's smile was immediate and bright. "The lighthouse it is. I know the old keeper well. He'd be delighted to have us. We'll bring blankets and hot cocoa and watch the universe unfold." The idea filled Elara with a profound sense of happiness. It wasn't just the comet, or the spectacular view. It was the shared anticipation, the planning, the quiet certainty that they would experience this momentous event together. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch of her cottage, a gentle rain pattering on the roof, Elara found herself gazing at the horizon, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Finn," she began, her voice soft, I've never stayed in one place for very long. My work takes me wherever the best observatories are, wherever the next discovery might be made." He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "And you're wondering what happens after the comet leaves?" She nodded, her gaze still fixed on the distant, misty sea. "Yes, I suppose I am. It's a big question, a scary one even." She finally met his eyes, a vulnerability shining in hers. "I'm not very good at putting down roots, Finn, or at letting people in." He reached out, taking her hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "Elara," he said, his voice a low, steady balm. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. Life, much like the cosmos, is a journey of continuous discovery. And roots, they don't have to be rigid. They can be flexible, adaptable. They can grow where they're nourished." He squeezed her hand gently. "And as for letting people in, you've let me in, Elara. More than anyone has in a long time. And I value that more than you know." His words were a balm to her anxious heart, a quiet reassurance that settled deep within her. He wasn't demanding promises or declarations. He was simply offering understanding, space, and a gentle hand to hold. I don't want to leave, Finn," she admitted, the words surprising even herself as they tumbled out. "Not yet. Anyway, Celeste Cove, it feels different now. It feels like home." And she knew, with a certainty that resonated through her very bones, that a large part of that feeling was because of him. He smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "Then don't," he said simply. "Not yet." He leaned closer, his gaze tender, his thumb gently caressing her knuckles. "Let's just focus on the comet for now, on the wonder of it all, and let the future unfold as it may, together." Ilara's heart fluttered, a profound sense of peace settling over her. He understood. He saw her, truly saw her, with all her complexities and uncertainties, and he embraced it. In his quiet strength, she found a comfort she hadn't known she was seeking. She looked at his face, framed by the soft, diffused light of the rainy afternoon, and knew, with a certainty that transcended all scientific logic, that the greatest discovery of her life wasn't light years away. It was right here, beside her, warm and real, a star just waiting to be truly seen, and she, in turn, felt truly seen by him. The Whisperer's Comet was just one night away, a spectacular cosmic event that promised a shared moment of breathtaking beauty, a celestial punctuation mark on the blossoming story of their hearts. The next day dawned with a crisp, clear sky, as if the heavens themselves were preparing for their grand performance. A collective buzz filled the observatory as researchers finalized preparations, their voices echoing with a contained excitement. Evelyn, however, felt a different kind of anticipation, a hum beneath her skin that had nothing to do with scientific protocols. She found Liam by the main telescope, adjusting a lens with practiced ease, his profile silhouetted against the pre-twilight glow. "Ready for the show?" he asked, turning to her, his smile infectious. "As I'll ever be," she replied, a flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with professional nerves. They ascended to the observation deck as dusk painted the sky in hues of lavender and rose. The air was cool and still, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant pine. One by one, stars began to prick the darkening canvas, shy at first, then boldly asserting their brilliance. The low hum of the observatory's instruments was a gentle backdrop to the hushed excitement of the small gathering. As the designated time approached, a collective gasp rippled through the observation deck. There it was. Not a pinpoint of light, but a luminous smudge, growing steadily brighter, trailing a magnificent ethereal tail. The Whisperer's Comet. It wasn't just bright. It was Galavé, a ghostly brushstroke of light against the velvet black, its twin tails shimmering with an otherworldly glow. It moved with a serene majesty, a silent traveler across an unimaginable distance, revealing secrets carried from the dawn of time. Evelyn peered through the main telescope, her breath catching in her throat. The comet filled the eyepiece, a spectacle of dust and ice, illuminated by a distant sun. She could almost feel its ancient journey, its silent whisper echoing across the cosmos. When she finally pulled away, her eyes met Liam's, who had been watching her more than the comet itself. "Incredible, isn't it?" he murmured, his voice low, as if not to break the fragile spell. "More than I ever imagined," she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. She looked at him then, truly looked at him, and saw the same wonder, the same profound connection to the vastness of everything, reflected in his eyes. "You know," Liam began, his gaze unwavering, "they say comets are messengers, that they carry wishes across the universe." He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing softly against her skin. "My wish? It's been right here, all along." Evelyn's heart pounded a rhythm faster than any data pulse. She leaned into his touch, her own hand rising to cover his. "And mine," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "has been hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to show me how to look." He closed the small distance between them, and in the hushed reverence of the cosmic spectacle, under the silent, ancient gaze of the Whisperer's Comet, Liam kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of stardust and rain, of long-held dreams and sudden, breathtaking reality. A kiss that was both a beginning and a homecoming, soft and certain, like the gentle pull of gravity. It wasn't a sudden, fiery explosion, but a slow, unfolding warmth, a quiet understanding that settled deep within her bones. It felt like finding a missing piece of herself she hadn't known was lost, a perfect alignment of two celestial bodies. The comet continued its stately procession across the heavens, But for Evelyn and Liam, the universe had shrunk to the space between them. They stood there, arms wrapped around each other, watching the final lingering moments of the celestial visitor, their hearts full not just of cosmic awe, but of a quiet, profound joy. The next morning, the observatory grounds were still buzzing, but with a different kind of energy. The scientists were cataloging observations, discussing spectroscopic data, but Evelyn felt a lightness in her step that had nothing to do with new findings. She found Liam packing up some equipment, a content smile playing on his lips. "So," she began, a playful glint in her eye, "about those wishes? Did yours come true?" He turned, his smile widening as he met her gaze. "Every single one, Dr. Reed, and then some." He walked over to her, taking her hands in his. "What about yours, Dr. Reed? Did the whisperer whisper anything special to you?" Evelyn squeezed his hands. "It whispered that the most beautiful mysteries aren't always light years away. Sometimes, they're right here, waiting to be discovered, if you just open your heart to seeing them." Their shared laughter mingled with the sounds of the observatory. The whisperer's comet had come and gone, a fleeting visitor, but it had left an indelible mark, not just on the scientific community, but on two hearts that had found their true north under its brilliant glow. Evelyn chose to stay at the observatory, finding a new kind of inspiration in her work, knowing that her greatest discovery was no longer solitary. Liam, ever the explorer, continued his work in archaeoastronomy, but his journeys always led him back to the observatory, and more importantly, back to Evelyn. Their lives, once so separate, now intertwined like binary stars, orbiting each other, each enhancing the other's brilliance. They often returned to the observation deck, not always for comets, but sometimes just to watch the moon rise, or to trace constellations with their fingers against the vast, star-dusted canvas. Evelyn, the meticulous scientist, had learned to appreciate the wonder beyond the data, and Liam, the intuitive dreamer, had found a steadfast anchor in Evelyn's brilliant mind and loving heart. One evening, years later, sitting on their small porch, overlooking the valley, the starlight a soft blanket above them, Evelyn leaned her head on Liam's shoulder. Comet, now a venerable elder cat, purred contentedly on her lap. "Do you ever think about the whisperer's comet?" she asked softly. Liam wrapped an arm around her, pulling her closer. "Every time I look at the stars, every time I look at you." He kissed the top of her head. "It taught me that the universe has an infinite capacity for wonder, but the greatest wonders are the ones we find in each other." Evelyn smiled, a deep, contented warmth filling her. The universe was vast and unknowable, full of mysteries still waiting to be unraveled. But her own personal universe, rich with love, laughter, and the quiet comfort of a shared life, felt perfectly understood. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, nestled against Liam, she knew their story, like the stars themselves, would continue to shine, bright and eternal.